everyone, it's Melissa from hymnsandhome.com, and today I'm going to share my brand new recipe for an Einkorn Challah bread. If you're not familiar with challah, it's actually a Jewish egg bread, and it just happens to be one of my favorite breads to make and to eat. And it is great in so many different uses. It's great straight out of the oven, it's great for sandwiches. I love making French toast from it, or just regular toast with some homemade strawberry jam on it. It would also make an excellent bread pudding once it's kind of past its prime. It's pretty easy to make. Traditionally, the loaf is braided, and I'm going to show you how to do that as well. If you're not familiar with einkorn, it's considered to be the original wheat. It has a different consistency and flavor than modern wheat, just slightly, and it also behaves a little differently than modern wheat. It's slower to absorb liquid, it doesn't build as much gluten, it actually doesn't have as much gluten content in general. It does have more nutritional value also than modern wheat. And for those of us with some gluten sensitivities, it's a real treat because it does not affect me the same way that modern wheat does. And for just people in general, it's usually more easily digestible than modern wheat as well. You can find more on einkorn in the link below in case you're interested. You can also find the printable version of this recipe on my blog. I've linked that below. And let's get started. For this recipe, you're going to want to pull out your stand mixer with a dough hook attachment. If you don't have one, you can certainly do it by hand. It's not a problem. It might just take a little bit longer. I highly recommend weighing your ingredients with a food scale because it will give you the most consistent results in baking. I've included both weight measurements and imperial measurements like cups and teaspoons in this recipe for your convenience. We're going to start out with 530 grams of all-purpose einkorn flour, or about 4 cups. We're going to add 2 teaspoons of salt, which is 13 grams. 14 grams of active dry yeast, which is 1 tablespoon plus 1 teaspoon. And we're going to whisk all of our dry ingredients together just to get them incorporated. Then I'm going to melt a 1/4 cup of coconut oil, or 55 grams. I'm going to add in 200 milliliters of warm water, which is 3/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons. And then I'm going to add in 75 grams of honey, or 3 tablespoons. We're going to use 2 eggs plus 1 egg yolk in this recipe. The extra yolk really gives it some added richness. You can watch me separate an egg here. I like using the shell, but you can also use your fingers or however you want to do it. And you're going to want to save that extra egg white. Just tuck it away in the fridge for later. We're going to whisk together all of our wet ingredients here. And then we're going to add our wet ingredients to our dry ingredients. I always wait to plug in any sort of appliance like this until after I've attached the dough hook. You just never know. We're going to knead this with the machine on low for several minutes until a sticky dough forms. And you're going to need to pause it maybe once or twice just to scrape down the sides and the bottom of the bowl because the flour does like to accumulate down there. So just give it a good scrape and then continue kneading it. While that's kneading, we're going to grease a large bowl with some coconut oil. I just like to use my fingers and get it all over the bowl. This is what we're going to put the dough in while it rises. Once your dough is nice and incorporated, you're going to scrape down the bowl, and then we're just going to let it sit for about 10 minutes to rest in the machine. Once that 10 minutes is up, we're going to put our dough on a lightly floured counter. Sprinkle a little bit more flour on top, just to make it easier to work with. And then you're just going to form it roughly into a ball. And place it in your greased bowl. Give it a flip over once so that both top and bottom of the dough are greased. And then you're going to cover it with a cotton tea towel and just place it in a warm location in your kitchen. And we're going to let it rise for between 1.5 and 2 hours, or until it's about doubled in size. You can leave your tools out because you're going to need those again in just a little bit. Once your rise time is up, you're going to line a baking sheet with some parchment paper. I've linked my favorite parchment paper below. It's completely chlorine and bleach free. And then we're going to dump out our dough onto a lightly floured surface again. Give it a little more flour on top. And then we're going to use a bench scraper or a dough cutter, whatever you want to call it, to divide our dough into 3 equal sections, or as close as you can get it. Working with one section at a time, we're going to very gently stretch it out to the length of the baking sheet. It's not going to take much effort because this dough is very floppy, but that's okay. Just trust the process. We're going to lay out the 3 sections parallel to one another because we are getting ready to braid our loaf. When I'm braiding bread, I don't start at one end. I actually start a little ways in, and I'll come back to that other end later. This works just the same as braiding hair or braiding anything else. You're always going to be placing the middle over one side or the other. So you're going to be alternating middle over left, middle over right, and then you want to keep it as close and tight as possible so you end up with a nice, tight loaf. Once I've finished one end, I'll go back and finish up that other end. And then for both ends, you're just going to tuck it under so it gives it a nice clean finish. You're going to place your braided loaf in your warm location and again, cover it with a cotton kitchen towel. We're going to let this rise for 1 hour. Once your hour is just about up, you're going to begin preheating your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Go get that egg white out of your fridge, and you're going to whisk it together with 1 tablespoon of water. And then we're just going to use a pastry brush and we're going to brush it over the entire top of the loaf. This is going to give it a really nice golden finish. And then if you would like, you can sprinkle it all over with some poppy seeds. It gives it a really nice finish. Into the oven it goes to bake at 350 degrees for about 18 to 20 minutes. Mine is usually done at around the 18-minute mark. So be sure to check it early. When you pull it out, you can tap it on the bottom to see if it sounds hollow, or as I like to do, you can take its temperature, and I like mine to be at about 180 degrees Fahrenheit internally. Then we're going to transfer it to a cooling rack. And just be really careful because it's going to be really hot. But you want to take it off that parchment paper, and we are going to let it cool pretty much completely before slicing. I hope that you'll give this recipe a try and that you love it as much as I do. If you do give this recipe a try, I'd love to hear what you think below in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to subscribe for more cottage living, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.